Can we just slow down a bit? Like, seriously. In the past few months, we've had 500 Worlds, Lair of the Tyrant, and now we have Reign of Iron, and at the end of April, they brought out the return of Yarick. It truly is a war without fucking end, isn't it?
Don't stare into the abyss, Anne. After all, it stares back.
My sanity collapsing aside, the most recent storyline / Warzone added to Warhammer 40k's story was Reign of Iron, War for the Cadian Gate. A storyline that would see the return of the Iron Warriors with a vengeance alongside their new character, Kravek Moorne. Now, the Iron Warriors were always around, but they have always been a vanilla sub-faction within the overall Chaos Space Marine faction, always being just Chaos Marines with hazard stripes to make them distinct. Then in 8th edition onward, they've always been themed as a siege-style army, preferring units like Havocs, Terminators, Vindicator siege tanks, Obliterators, and the reintroduced Mutilators with the redesigned Defiler. Basically, if you want to play a heavy siege army, the Iron Warriors are your boys. The whole campaign is just the Iron Warriors finally getting some well-deserved spotlight, as they've always been a legion whose personality and tactics has kept them separate from the other traitor forces. They still follow a legion structure like they did during the Horus Heresy, they have a decent relationship with their Primarch comparatively, and they don't worship chaos. Any worship, quote-unquote, they do is completely transactional. I do X so I can get Y sort of thing. Hell, they also abhor any gifts of chaos. If an Iron Warrior gets a gift, they cut off the offending limb or flesh, then burn it before they go get medical help. This creates an interesting personality for the Legion, as they are more Renegade Legion than actual Chaos Worshippers, though their Primarch is still a Daemon Prince, and a massive prick to boot. But let's not waste any time. The Iron Warriors are on the move, the Cadian Gate is under siege, and the Mechanicus got Aunt Fanny from robots to lend support to the Imperial defenses. Let's get into Reign of Iron, and see how it pans out. Spoilers ahead. Our story begins on the Daemon world Mendringard, the Iron Warriors' current main base of operations within the Eye of Terror. We rarely get to check in on a Traitor Legion homeworld, but Reign of Iron has a section dedicated to talking about many of the Legion's or Warband's home bases, which is honestly really cool. The world of Mendringard has been turned into a massive supercomputer / fortress for the Iron Warriors to organize around and do what they do best. Plan out sieges, play games of Warhammer 40k, and bitch about how everyone outside of them sucks. However, what gets the ball rolling is the Daemon Primarch Perturabo. Now, Perturabo is a character in and of himself, and it's better to do a full video on him when we get to Need to Know Primarchs. However, to just quickly sum him up, Perturabo is a siege master with a massive anger issue, and an unchecked ego, who can never be wrong. Perturabo has a new plan, the Infinite Citadel, a mind-boggling, insane plan to create a galactic-wide campaign that will turn every planet the Iron Warriors conquer into fortress worlds, every moon into artillery / orbital batteries, and whole star systems into ramparts, all to get closer to his ultimate goal of Terra. This plan begins with Perturabo making a deal with Vashdor the Archifane. Now, if you remember my Arcs of Omen video, you remember that Vashdor was working with Abaddon the Despoiler, which normally would be a betrayal of the highest order with what Perturabo has planned. But Vashdor is a businessman, and you know what they say about business, always screw everyone over that isn't you. Vashdor, of course, made a deal with Perturabo, and the Iron Warriors began their invasion of the Cadian Gate, with a whole legion's worth of new demon engines and ships. Now, how is this a betrayal to Abaddon, I hear you asking? Well, some context, but after the fall of Cadia, the forces of Chaos basically took the destroyed world and fortified its shards that now sat within the Eye of Terror, creating a resupply and launching point from the Cadian Gate into its neighboring sectors. These shards are controlled mostly by the Black Legion, who are still cleaning up minor holds of remaining Cadians, Sisters of Battle, and so on, who surprisingly survived the fall of Cadia. However, Perturabo didn't want to be beholden to Abaddon's rules or will, and he needs Cadia to begin his plans. So, yeah, the Iron Warriors invade Cadia in a pretty ironic twist of the knife. This battle was pretty short, honestly. The Chaos Lord in charge did get a message out that the Iron Warriors had betrayed the Black Legion, but the battle was pretty much settled after only a few weeks of fighting. Surviving Black Legionnaires fled into the demonic wilderness of Cadia, while the rest were cut down. This invasion, of course, was entrusted to the new Iron Warriors character, Kravek Moorne, a Warsmith of the Legion. Now, a Warsmith is basically the equivalent of a Space Marine Chapter Master, a master of siegecraft in their own right, and you don't just get the position by killing someone for it. You have to earn it among the Iron Warriors and in the eyes of Perturabo. Now, Kravek has been a Warsmith for 2 millennia, and has apparently proven himself time and time again. So much so that Perturabo himself has entrusted Kravek with the opening salvos of this campaign, which Kravek intends to keep on schedule as best he can. Once Cadia was secured, Kravek would begin fortifying it into the Iron Warriors staging ground. The goal from here was to take the Agrippinnon system, a system that was the heart of several sector defenses and resupply efforts near the Cadian Gate. Kravek, however, made several smaller goals with the intent to make taking Agrippinnon easier by simultaneously invading Oledros, Trove, and Vendara systems. The idea was to make a noose, conquer these 3 systems at relatively the same time, and the Iron Warriors could strangle the life out of Agrippinnon. But first, they had to get past the Tauros system. Now, it would have been easy to blow past the Tauros system if it wasn't reinforced by the majority of what had managed to evacuate Cadia. These survivors turned out to be a hell of a lot more trouble than initially thought, as they had a grudge to settle with the forces of chaos, and blowing up their home and then turning its corpse into a demonic fortress. This was also made harder by the fact these regiments gathered up civilians and turned them into new regiments of guardsmen called Neo-Cadians. Those who weren't Cadian by birth, but had the training, culture, and spirit of Cadia beat into them. All of them led by Castellan Ursula Creed, Usaker Creed's daughter and now leader of the Cadian Eighth. Kravek Moorne, knowing this was going to be an issue, launched his invasion of the Tauros system, intending on either conquering it or making it a road for his actual goals. Smashing through the Imperial fleet that hung around the planet, Kravek's Iron Warriors and their allies of Traitor Guard, Chaos Knights, and Dark Mechanicum forces began to land en masse upon Tauros' primary world. However, as his forces were being deployed, Ursula Creed revealed that she wasn't just any unaugmented human, she was a tactical beast, and she was going to make Kravek's forces pay for every inch. Several Iron Warriors landing sites were wiped out within moments of landing, and the defenses of Tauros proved to be extremely dangerous. Veterans of Cadia leading suicidal and maddening counteroffensives to stop the Iron Warriors from building up siege works, trench networks, and even artillery positions. Now, these actions weren't stopping Kravek's forces entirely, but it was enough of a headache to get Kravek to build a grudging respect for Ursula. But even though this stubborn defense of Tauros and its main fortress, the Tower of Detestation, was taking time, it was getting done. Then, bad news came like a sucker punch to the gut. A strike force of Imperial Fists and Black Templars had managed to break the Iron Warriors' blockade around the planet, and began being a massive headache. This strike force was led by returning Imperial Fist character, Darnith Lysander, the now recently re-promoted First Company captain of the Imperial Fists, who has a major hate boner for the Iron Warriors, and the second he heard they were on the move, he grabbed a bunch of angry idiots, charged towards the Cadian Gate, and desired to make Kravek Moorne's day much worse. Upon their arrival, Lysander and his forces smashed a pretty serious formation of the Iron Warriors, destroying several demonic siege towers, siege weapons, and blunting an assault of Chaos Knights before retreating inside the tower. This was massively frustrating for Kravek, as he had a schedule to keep and he wasn't about to get bogged down by some angry pissant and his crusading LARPing buddies. So Kravek did what any good Warsmith does. Delegate the operation to someone else, then move on. Yep, Kravek just fucks off and leaves some other guy to siege Tauros while he goes for the main objective. So let's check in on the Agrippinnon system and the new Mechanicus character who set up shop there. Now, when Cadia fell, the Agrippinnon system went into understandable survival mode. So much so that in order to keep the systems around it supplied and defended, they had to increase production by 200% on their major forge worlds. This had the desired effect of keeping production on pace with what the Imperium needed, but had the natural consequence of people dying from exhaustion, factory accidents, and other problems. It got so bad in the Agrippinnon system that worker deaths were outpacing military casualties, and this took away from the Agrippinnon defenses, making the system a pretty easy target, until Thulia Gold and her forces arrived. Thulia Gold is the new and much needed Mechanicus character. She is a member of the Ordo Reductor, a subcult within the Mechanicus that believes the Omnissiah is a being of destruction. Basically, she believes the machine god's creation should be used in some way, shape, or form to destroy shit, and she apparently takes it to a ridiculous extreme. This has made her extremely unpopular among the forces of the Mechanicus. One of her larger critics is Belisarius Call, who cites that her actions are extremely reckless and damage the overall goals and beliefs of the Mechanicus, which she just responds with, yeah, and? She doesn't really care, and so long as she gets results, the Fabricator General of Mars doesn't really care either. Thulia arrived within the Agrippinnon system and quickly began to reinforce it. Though before the Iron Warriors got there, it was looking more like an occupation than a defense, with Thulia basically stealing, or in her words, protecting, ancient relics, designs, and weaponry from the Agrippinnon Forge Worlds, and locking them inside her ship's vault. For safety, of course. But her forces would be further augmented by reinforcing Iron Hands companies, Knights of House Raven and Hawkshroud, and the remains of Battlefleet Obscurus, who were rallying after being scattered during the fall of Cadia. By the time of Kravek Moorne's forces arrived in the Agrippinnon system, the system was bristling with brand new defenses, something Moorne and his forces never accounted for. This would, of course, lead to a bloody siege where the Iron Warriors and their forces smashed into the Imperial defenses on the world of Eladros Delphos. The fleets in orbit battled over the planet's 9 moons, fighting for control of the orbital guns that laid on their surfaces, while Kravek Moorne and his forces had one goal in mind. If Kravek wanted to keep on schedule to get shit done, he reasoned he had to take the mountain hive city of Hyske. Destroy that, and the Loyalist forces would buckle and break under the wave of iron he was forcing on them. This operation would hit a snag, though, as Kravek's forces of Iron Warriors, Traitor Guard, Chaos Knights, and Titan Legions were met with a mirrored force. The Imperials were outnumbered, but fuck did they hit hard, and precisely where they needed to, with Thulia Gold even managing to disintegrate one of Kravek's escort land raiders in a single volley with her special gun, the Jericho-class Conversion Resonator. This allowed the Iron Hands forces to slam into Kravek's line and pin the Iron Warriors in place, with Kravek and the Iron Hands Iron Father engaging each other in hand-to-hand combat. Though this engagement wasn't to last. Thulia Gold took a nasty hit, forcing her to retreat and take a more overseer role to the battle, while one of the Traitor Titans took a nasty blow, and although the Iron Warriors and Iron Hands didn't look at it, their sensors were picking up energy surges from the Titan's reactor. Quickly, the Iron Hands broke off, fleeing into their dropships, while Kravek Moorne and his surviving bodyguards ran to their land raiders. Both sides quickly fled, and crushed retreating Guard and Skitarii units to get clear, as the Titan's reactor went supernova and wiped out anything near its explosion, with the battle pretty much ending in a stalemate, which Kravek wanted to avoid. With this stalemate ending in the Loyalists' favor, Kravek realized that he wasn't going to be able to keep to Perturabo's schedule, which wasn't a failure per se, it just means more time would be needed to take the Cadian Gate now. With his forces besieging 4 star systems, and with a steady stream of reinforcements, if the Imperial forces didn't pull something out of their ass, it was only a matter of time till Kravek could see his master's plan fulfilled. Though the book ends on a monologue from Darnith Lysander, who reveals that many Cadian regiments are returning to the Cadian Gate, and that more Sons of Dorn are coming as well. He will see the Iron Warriors stopped, no matter what. Reign of Iron is intended to set up another storyline for Warhammer, as we are near the end of war zones like the Nachman Gauntlet and Pariah Nexus. This means that when those war zones come to a close, we will have this war zone to come back to and progress, as you gotta remember this crucial fact. Cadia wasn't the only world the Imperium fortified around the Eye of Terror. It was just the starting line for the forces of Chaos to bypass before they run a gauntlet of bullshit. Which is great because we haven't talked about or seen Cadia in a while, and seeing it now under the control of the faction that got stuck on it for 3 decades, it's kinda jarring to see as a veteran of Warhammer in a good way. The campaign was also to introduce the new characters and units for the Forces of Chaos and Mechanicus respectively, with Chaos getting Kravek as a new named character, the Mutilators being brought back after 2 editions of not having them, and a redesigned Defiler, whose model kit needed a rework, while Mechanicus got Thulia Gold, their first named character since Belisarius Call, and the new Hastari units, who focus on heavy anti-infantry / vehicle tactics. A much needed buff to an army that was struggling throughout 10th edition. It also gave us a new rule set to play Apocalypse-sized games, which are games that can triple or quadruple the size of regular games. Though they do recommend you play teams for this game mode, and that you should only play it if you have a firm understanding of 40k's rules. This is also the second to last storyline for 10th edition, as the next story we will be covering is Yarick's Return, War Without End, which will take us back to Armageddon, a world we just revisited when Angron launched another invasion there. But before we cover that, I'll be covering the Tyranids next, which will be our final Xenos army before we start covering the Imperial and Chaos factions. That was the rule for Need to Know. The Xenos factions get love first, then we cover the factions everyone already talks about. So, if you want to see those videos early, subscribe to the Patreon. You not only get to see them a week early before they come out on YouTube, but you get access to exclusive content and get to vote on what we talk about next. The new poll should already be up, but if you can't spare $5 because your other subscriptions are eating away at ya, don't sweat it. Just like, comment, and share the video around. That also helps more than you know. But until then, I'll see you all next time.